One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. Preview season has reached the MAC, and we've brought longtime friend of the podcast, Alex from the MAC Sports Connection podcast, over to join us and to preview all things MACtion. Alex, it's been a little bit since we've had the chance to sit down and talk some Mid-American football. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. It's unreal that we are now in July and we are officially under 2 months from kickoff, right? You know, it just feels absolutely insane. Appreciate you guys having me back on. Always love what you guys do and what you guys put out. Your content is well above average, and you've got some great stuff going on. And of course, I joke well above average. You guys have always cranked out excellent content, and it's an honor to be joining you today and to be a part of this MAC preview.
Man, I think, Alex, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say you might have been the very first guest that I ever had on the show 4 years ago now. Seems like a lifetime ago, but it's been one of the threads that we've wanted to carry through this show is that, you know, EA college football, and I've referenced this on other shows as well, that their mantra that every team is someone's favorite team really stuck with us, right? And we felt like that embodied what we wanted this show to be. And so, you know, we're thrilled to have done these in-depth deep dives into the conferences, and now to arrive at the MAC to talk with someone that lives, eats, breathes MACtion football. I'm really excited to get into this. And as with multiple other podcasts that we've done in these other previews, we've set about dividing the conference into the contenders tier, the dark horses tier, and the bowl hopefuls. And we'll talk about some teams that are maybe out of that bowl picture, but certainly have reasons to be excited about this year. Off the top, though, when you look at the MAC and the changing landscape of college football, and we have Northern Illinois headed over to the Mountain West next year, right, as 2026 brings about new conference realignment, what do you think the legacy of the MAC is set to be going forward in college football? And what are those storylines that you're looking forward to evolving as the landscape continues to shift?
Man, you're trying to get me in trouble with the conference already with that first question. What is the legacy of the conference? I don't like this. I'm leaving now. It's tough. And I feel like I can be pretty objective when it comes to this conference. Of course, I'm always going to, carry the banner of the league and, chant Go MACtion from every mountaintop, from every valley that I can. But I think the MAC's at a crossroads right now. And you're starting to see this with a lot of different things in college football. We're seeing another round of conference realignment after the dust settled from a couple years ago. And now we're seeing Texas State go to the Pac-12. We're seeing FCS and non-football programs being called up to join the big name leagues that comprise the FBS level. And so, I mean, you're seeing UC Davis is eventually going to be a football member of the Mountain West, something that I never in a million years would have ever guessed. So I think the MAC is at a crossroads. I think, I think two things can be true. The MAC has been the most stable conference, which stability can be a great thing. But I also think the MAC has been the most stagnant conference. And again, the two things can be true. Stability is never a bad thing. Stagnation can get you in trouble. And being a player by bringing in UMass was the right move. I do think the MAC should have been a little bit more aggressive and brought in another member with them, like a Delaware. Delaware is going to be joining the MAC as a rowing affiliate for women's rowing here this fall. The MAC is sponsoring in 2025 women's rowing. as a sport. Schools like High Point are going to be part of that. So I think there's an opportunity to say, hey, Delaware, you're already going to be joining us. Why not work this out? Conference USA scooped them up, and that was a great get for Conference USA. But I think now the MAC has to look at what Conference USA is doing, and say, hey, we need to be a little bit more aggressive. This time, you don't need, if you want a Western Kentucky, you don't need Middle Tennessee. I've talked to a lot of Tops fans who are both for and both very against moving to the MAC, and it makes sense for both sides. But I think the MAC has to be aggressive if they want that legacy to be, the little conference that could, right? I feel like that's part of the mantra from our guys or our dear friends over at Hustle Belt, the little conference that could, and if the MAC wants to keep that moniker and retain that title, you've got to be a little bit more aggressive with these moves. We saw the Lairfield Directors Cup was just released. And I noticed something very interesting. UMass was at the top of the Mid-American Conference for all sports. And I think that shows the sign of a healthy athletic department. Everybody wants to point, well, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. Sure, their football is not great right now. And I know we'll talk about UMass in a minute. But when you're making these decisions, you can't purely base it off of football. I think you get away with that a little bit if you're doing a football only membership like Northern Illinois is going to be doing with the Mountain West, but you have to look holistically at the entire department. UMass has solid basketball. UMass has fantastic field hockey. You have to look at everything and say, we're bringing all of this value, not just football. Football can be a driving force, sure, but you have to look at everything. And again, the MAC needs to be more aggressive in finding other athletic departments that fit the scope of the Mid-American Conference and can probably ultimately elevate it. I think UMass is going to be a massive elevator when it comes to basketball, when it comes to some of these other sports.
Yeah, I think you've said a number of things that intrigue me there. One, I think the dichotomy, right, between Conference USA that's been described by a number of pundits as the Ellis Island of college football, especially, right, versus the MAC that hasn't changed a lot. I posted a conference realignment thread for College Football 26 over on our Twitter account. And as I was doing that, kind of trying to combine competitiveness and regionality, I was struck when I got to the MAC by the fact that even going back to all the years that we spent playing NCAA 14, the MAC didn't really ever change a ton, right?
No.
I mean, like the regionality of that conference, maybe aside from Buffalo, made a lot of natural sense. And so you never really wanted to move teams out. But similarly, it was also hard to maybe put teams in when you've got all these other conferences. I think you're right. Compared to Conference USA, that feels like they paddle at 1,000 strokes a minute, while the MAC is, just kind of doing the butterfly or something. But at the same time, it almost feels like they're going the same speed. They just look very different in how they've done that. I am curious to see what each conference ends up being going forward as TV revenue continues to be at the fore of these changing landscapes. And when you mention looking at athletic departments as a whole, not just the football program, these schools need to have the attendance and they want to have those student athletes flooding into their program because maybe TV revenue isn't going to be the lifeblood of their program, like some of these teams are hoping for the West Coast, right? As the Pac-12 kind of pieces itself back together, maybe you've just got to exist as an institution and offer what you offer, and kind of go about it that way. I think the MAC, if they were to expand, would certainly be a good thing to add a team like Western Kentucky to add some fresh blood, like they've done with UMass. But overall, I think what helps the MAC and what we're about to get into is the Maction brand, right? There are still strong brands, strong football teams that we're going to talk about here that make it exciting for, diehards like you and myself. And at least for me, that gives me hope that MAC football, MAC athletics will always have their place.
Well, and I think you nailed that pretty spot on. The MAC is always going to be the conference. I mean, the MAC made its brand in the mid to early 2000s with the midweek Maction. It really kind of took off during the 2010s, some barn burners between Northern Illinois and Toledo, Western Michigan. They played some barn burners with Toledo, Ball State, Buffalo. Just so many fantastic midweek games, and I do think we're seeing Conference USA kind of emulate that a little bit. They're doing the midweek games in October. Now, I do think if the MAC and Conference USA wanted to work something out where they play their midweek games in November and let the MAC have the October midweek slot, I think fans would be a little warmer and perhaps a little bit happier. But you're starting to see some of that take off. I do think that there is a bit of a fan penalty with the midweek action, and I think that in 2026, the Mac Media deal expires. And while the deal was great back in 2014 when it was signed, that deal has since looked very anemic. The deal was for about $800,000 a school at the time, and at that time, that was great. That was good money back in 2014, which was up from I think $250,000 a school initially. So, I mean, massive jump in finances, put the MAC, I think it was either second or third for the group of five at the time. And now the MAC is trading blows with Conference USA on financial distribution. So I think that the new media deal will be a massive impact, but I do think that we have to be very careful. The conference is chasing the dollar, and I think it does sacrifice the fan experience because now, yes, you get a few home games during September, October, but November, I'm sorry, I don't want to take my kids out. If I have kids, I don't want to take my kids out to a Tuesday night game between Toledo and Buffalo.
Yeah.
When we could be at home on a school night for them or, work night. Some fans, part of Northern Illinois' critique has been, it's an hour drive from Chicago to DeKalb. Valid argument. I'm not gonna, but I do think that that's part of the thing where some of the fans feel a little bit alienated. And I think that we need to find a way to maybe mix that up, whether it be hey, you're going to play one home and one away midweek game. Maybe we move that to one in October and then one in November, whatever it is. Like you find another solution that makes the fans happy, that also gets you that national exposure. I mean, we've now seen guys taken in the first round of the NFL draft, second round of the NFL draft, guys who wouldn't have gotten that attention because they would be playing and competing against the Ohio State Michigan games on a Saturday. So I think that there is give and take, great exposure, empty stadiums.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. I just felt like I was transported back to my D2 days as an assistant athletic director, just talking shop. Okay, what are we going to do to get our institution bigger and better opportunities? It's an interesting spot the MAC finds themselves in, but we're obviously here to talk about the football teams suiting up for 2025. And I mentioned contenders, dark horses, and bowl hopefuls are our three main categories here. I had you list out which of the teams fell into each of the categories. And so we'll start off the top with our contenders for the conference championship, and then by extension, therefore, contenders, hopefully, to reach the college football playoff. And the top team on your list, Alex, was Toledo. Last year, 8-5, just 4-4 in conference play. And, it's one of the interesting things to look at Jason Candle's record, and you can see the heights of the program, and you can see what he's done to get Toledo to be viewed as, every single year they're a threat to win the MAC. But then he only has 2 MAC championships in, nearly a decade, right? Yeah, this is his 10th season. It feels at the same time as equally as impressive what he's built Toledo into. And to me, it also feels like, maybe some missed opportunities for the Rockets as well. But they're right back at the top of the conference projections for 2025. They've got some key players coming back like Tucker Gleason. So talk to me a little bit about the Rockets and kind of the vibe that they give you ahead of this year.
Well, and I think it's interesting, Jason Candle coming into his 10th year. A lot of people tend to overlook a few facts and stats about Jason Candle. I'm going to kind of throw those out for you. Jason Candle sits at 73 wins. That is tied for first all time in Toledo history. And do you know who that's tied with? That's Gary Pinkel, College Football Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah.
Jason Candle has as many MAC titles as Gary Pinkel, College Football Hall of Fame coach. And Jason Candle has done it in the exact same amount of years. Gary Pinkel also has 3 ties. So yes, he has 3 less losses. I think his record is officially 73, 37, and 3. Jason Candle is 73 and 40. So their win record is the exact same. Their win percentage is the exact same. Jason Candle is going to break that here in his 10th year, but I think there's another element. There's a lot of loyalty. Jason Candle was called twice by Miami, Florida, by Mario Cristobal.
Wow.
To say, come be my offensive coordinator. I'll pay you this. I'll pay you this. Was going to pay him, I think, 1.6, 1.8 million to be the OC at Miami. Jason Candle is a head coach. I do, there are times I will admit I question things and decisions he makes as a head coach. But what fan doesn't, right? What supporter of a program doesn't? I think Jason Candle gets a lot of flack for doing just as good a job as Gary Pinkel has done. Just last year, Jason Candle beat 2 Power 4 opponents, Pittsburgh and waxed Mississippi State down in Stark Vegas, as they like to call it. So that hasn't been done in a long time. He was part of the staff that beat Arkansas out in Little Rock back in 2015. Jason Candle knows Toledo. Jason Candle is building his family here in Toledo. I think Jason Candle, if he got his choice, honestly, might choose to retire in Toledo. I like the vibes around this program right now. Toledo's bringing back Tucker Gleason. They're bringing back Junior Vandeross. The defense is going to be a little depleted. Not gonna lie, but it's guys who are going to the NFL. It's not just, oh, hey, we're graduating. No, you're losing NFL talent year after year after year on the defensive side. Something you don't hear out of the Mid-American Conference, right? The MAC, you're kind of known for your offensive guys, some of your offensive linemen. Toledo's cranking out defensive guys who are making massive impacts. Quinyon Mitchell from 2 years ago is now was almost rookie of the year last year, out of Toledo. Like it just, there's something special about what Jason Candle is building with loyalty at Toledo. You see a few guys go into the portal here and there, but you don't see a lot of big name starters go to the portal too often. DeQuan Finn, Penny Boone were 2 of the big ones. They did everything they could in the MAC at the time. I don't disparage them. I do think that it's interesting to see DeQuan Finn come back, and I know we'll get to Miami here in a minute. But Penny Boone, he kind of bounced around after he left Toledo. He really made a name for himself, and I think had a chance to go be a pro running back. But kind of bouncing around. That's that double-edged sword of the transfer portal. Yeah, you're gonna make a great name for yourself one place, but if it doesn't pan out, it's gonna be a struggle elsewhere. But yeah, going off this Toledo team, the last time Toledo went 7-5 in the regular season, they ripped off 11 straight wins the following year and went back to the MAC championship. I really think Toledo has the tools, especially on the offensive side, especially now that they've added Chip Trainum, the former running back from Kentucky, who also was the hero for Ohio State 2 years ago against Notre Dame in South Bend. A lot of people don't remember that,
Sure.
but you look at his resume and you're like, oh, that was that guy. This is a good running back to kind of help support a rushing attack last year that was unbelievably anemic. Now you're going to rely on Ethan Spooth on the offensive line and a couple of transfers. You got to get those guys to gel, and you got to get them to gel quickly. You do that, this is going to be a really good Toledo offense. It's going to have flashes of the Juwan Newton, Junior Vandeross era. Really, if you're an old Toledo head like I am, you think of the Bernard Reedy days. That's a throwback name for you. And Bernard Reedy was the receiver who helped Toledo upset Cincinnati in the Glass Bowl back in 2012. I had to think there for a second. That's how old I am. Just FYI to everybody. Right. But this is going to be a really good offense. I really really, really like what Toledo did in the transfer portal. They went and got guys that they knew could immediately add an impact. Ontario Brown,
Mm-hmm.
massive in-conference portal transfer from NIU. And I think he, to him, he saw an opportunity to play with some other good talent. Northern Illinois is returning some great talent, but I think he wanted an opportunity to really, really kind of just run his legacy elsewhere. I don't like in conference portal transfers. I want to be very clear on this.
Does feel weird.
I think he should have stayed at Northern Illinois as a Toledo alumni. I'm glad he's coming to Toledo. As a MAC fan, I kind of don't like it. I'm like, yeah, you're half a dozen of one, six of the other kind of thing. It's like
Right.
you're in the same conference. You're going to play the same people, and now you've got a whole 100-man roster who hates you. Like, it's you're not winning any friends on this one. But I really like what Toledo's doing. They've done a really great job in the transfer portal. And just kind of looking at, and I've got some of the numbers. I did have some of the numbers pulled up here. I really think that this is going to be one of those things you have to expect a lot. Toledo ranks 72nd in SP plus, 77th offense, 63rd defense. They're projected 8.5 wins. I really think this could be a really good year for Toledo.
It does feel like, maybe after you look at the record, and if you're dived into the preview magazines, maybe you're like, oh yeah, Toledo wasn't quite as good as I thought they were going to be last year.
Mm-hmm.
This year maybe feels like the bounce back under Canada, right? You look at their schedule too. They avoid Ohio. They avoid Buffalo, which I'm extremely high on. We'll talk about the Bulls in just a little bit. They do take on Northern Illinois and Miami of Ohio in back-to-back weeks in conference, and that's kind of sandwiched around or I should say, Northern Illinois is sandwiched in between road trips to the Palouse and then to Oxford to take on the Red Hawks. So kind of feels like maybe Toledo's schedule, you could distill it down to those 3 weeks and see if you get kind of the flavor of what Toledo is going to bring to the table this year. Speaking of Ohio, let's talk about the Ohio Bobcats. Brian Smith takes over year one for him as the head coach there in Athens. And listen, as high as we were on Tim Albin last year and as in awe of the job that he did last year after losing 8 starters to the spring portal, doesn't matter. He goes and wins the MAC championship. They obviously win the bowl game after he's exited for Charlotte, but he's gone now. And that the magic that he had seemingly is gone with him to the East Coast as well. So talk to me about the Bobcats. They get Parker Navarro to come back as QB1, but what do you look for to be kind of the hallmarks of this new Ohio Bobcats team?
I think Ohio, in terms of a coaching regime change, really lucked out, because this wasn't a true, this wasn't a true change. You kept the offensive coordinator from a year ago. You kept a lot of staff. You kept a lot of personnel. Transfer portal wasn't too devastating to you. And then you bring in a couple really solid guys from elsewhere. Ricky Hyatt Jr. from South Alabama, Ronald Jackson Jr. from Montana, Tony Mathis. You've got Josh Waite from Shippensburg. It's a D2 school. You've got Nick Marinaro. Sorry, I always screw that up coming in. This is going to be a solid offense. And defense, I think that's where, if I'm being honest, that's where I'm most worried. You get the coordinator who orchestrated the offense, and you get the quarterback who ran the offense. You get Sei Bangura back from Minnesota, who was just a stud for Ohio not too long ago. So you get him back. I think it's going to be the defense that's going to be the thing that kind of slips this team up. Lost some players to the portal, lost some guys to graduation. Last year was a culmination of the Tim Albin era, but also the Frank Solich era. Frank Solich got Ohio to the championship so many times, couldn't get it done. That was 56 years in the waiting. The longest then drought in MAC history of not winning a conference championship. And now I think there's an opportunity for them to run it back. This schedule is brutal for the non-conference. Let's just call it what it is. But I think there's a real world in which these Bobcats could go 2-2, 3-1 in the non-conference. I mean, you get Rutgers, but that's an early game. You get West Virginia at home. Ohio has only lost one game in the last 3 years at home. And I think that's an important stat. There's such a thing as home field advantage even in the Mid-American Conference, and I think you pack Peden Stadium with the green and white. It's going to be a tough out for West Virginia, who is coming back to their own coaching change with Rich Rodriguez with his second stint. Sure. And they had a bunch of transfer guys. So this is going to be a really interesting test for West Virginia as well as for Brian Smith in Ohio. But then you can write off Ohio State. If they pull off the win in Columbus, cancel the season for everybody else. It's done. It's over. Ohio's winning it all. Ohio, not Ohio State. But then, this non-conference schedule, a little bit tough, but I think that gets them ready, and it's a winnable. Like you can have a plus 500 non-conference record,
sure,
heading into conference play. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying that people should go book that right now, but I don't think it's that insane to say that they could finish 3-1, maybe no worse than 2-2.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. I don't think it's crazy at all. We have a little content series on our Twitter account that we call Upsets to Watch. And one of those upsets, as I was diving into all these teams, even before I started writing the deep dives, was that Ohio hosting West Virginia game. And as many people rolled their eyes and said, "Are you kidding me?" For all the points that you laid out, right? I know Rich Rod's coming back, but it's going to take time for him to rebuild that Mountaineers program. And it's a program that doesn't really know what it is right now from a roster standpoint or elsewhere. They had, I think, 50 transfers out of the program. Right. It was just an absurd amount of guys leaving. So even if West Virginia is a complete team, let's say they put all the puzzle pieces together, as we've seen with teams like Florida State, it really is a flip of the coin, whether or not all of those transfers can gel, and if they can gel early, not just over the course of a year, but early. And you're right. This is a talented Ohio team. The offense is going to have an identity. I like their infusion back to the run game with Bangura coming back. I like the Ohio Bobcats, and I'm absolutely putting West Virginia on upset alert. Let's go over to Miami of Ohio and talk about the Red Hawks now. The Red Hawks with Chuck Martin, who is just a legend in the MAC and coaching circles in general. What do you like about the Red Hawks? And you've got them listed as team 3 out of 4 on your contenders list here.
Yeah, no, and I've got my list right here. The X Factor. And if you're a MAC fan, you know this guy, DeQuan Finn, coming back in from Baylor. And I think what's going to be really interesting is, again, these in-conference portal transfers, not a fan of. DeQuan Finn got hurt last year at Baylor, had actually won the starting job in camp, got hurt, ultimately ended up not getting that job back. But I think that this is going to be a really, really good offense for him. Deion Colsey from Notre Dame coming in. He's got Kenny Tracy. You've got Jordan Brunson. There's a bunch of really solid pieces for him to have. Now, I think the coin flip here for this offense is this is the first time in 6 years that you don't have Brett Gabbert under center.
Right.
And I think, Chuck Martin has been at Miami since 2014, I believe. He's had Brett Gabbert under center more than he's not, which is kind of insane to think about.
Right.
And so this, he hasn't had a different quarterback really in the last several years, and now you get kind of a borrow or a 1-year rental of DeQuan Finn. How much do you use him? How much do you say, is he your guy that's going to go win you the close games? Maybe. He's got great scrambling ability. He can throw on the run. Some questionable decisions. As a Toledo fan, I watched that in the MAC championship against Illinois. I was there for both. The only 2 losses Toledo had on the season, I think I was the problem. I'm sorry, Jason Candle. But for me, I think that there's an opportunity for him to have a really good season. But it's gonna rely entirely on what Chuck Martin lets him do. If Chuck Martin kind of puts a rein on him and says, "Hey, we need you to be more of a pocket passer," I think Miami gets in trouble. If Chuck Martin says, "Hey, I have you here. Yeah, you're going to start, but you're mostly going to mentor the young guys," Miami gets in trouble. Now, on the defensive side, I fully expect that this is going to be another tough defense. Miami has done a great job cranking out tough defenses. In fact, the S&P Plus, they have them 96 overall with the 35th ranked defense. That feels really high, but that's what I've got written down. And I really think that this Miami team, they've done a really nice job. Chuck Martin has done a really nice job righting this ship for Miami. Prior to him, they were not great. His first couple years were not great, but he's done a great job in turning them into a contender. Since 2019, they've been to 3 MAC championships. This is a really good Red Hawks program, and they're going to continue to hum, and that's why I have them as one of my contenders.
I love the wide receiver core that they've got. You mentioned a couple of those names. It just looks like they went out and did an excellent job of not only getting a quarterback who is dynamic and can be that X factor, and certainly in the MAC can be just a pain to prepare for on a week-to-week basis, but then they gave him weapons as well. Miami of Ohio absolutely feels like a very complete team in the conference. Northern Illinois is the final team in this contenders tier, and Ethan Hampton kind of made a name for himself last year. Obviously, the Huskies go into South Bend and upset Notre Dame. Thomas Hammock is introduced to America, and then it felt like Northern Illinois kind of just petered out. They had some injuries, they had some bad luck, but they just never really got it going again, at least not to the ceiling that I think some of us all of a sudden dreamed was possible. MAC championship and, go into a really nice bowl game. They finish 8-5, but with Hampton now off at Illinois, the Huskies have got to turn to the hero of the famous Idaho Potato Bowl and Josh Holst to lead them through this year.
Well, and I think that's what's going to be fun if you're NIU. I think Josh Holst, obviously he finished out that year strong. He started against Toledo in that 13-7 just slugfest, where both teams were starting backup quarterbacks. Neither team was at full strength, but we were treated to a real defensive showcase in that game, and I love games like that. And then he started against Ball State, started against Fresno State, and played well against Fresno State. I'm just kind of looking at some of the stuff that he did from last year, and he had a really good bowl game, at least based off of what I'm kind of seeing. 18 of 30 with 1 interception. He had 2 touchdowns. You can't be upset with that. You can be upset with the completion percentage, maybe, but it's still 60% for a $182. This wasn't a bad game for him, and I think that's that kind of game that builds confidence and builds a little bit of momentum for a guy, right? You need that. All right, this is where I kind of take my next step. Now you have all off season to study, get a little bit better, knowing you're the guy who has the target on his back. Where the young guys are going to be like, "Hey, we want that job." But I really, really think that this Northern Illinois team, this is going to be a defensively driven team. Ontario Brown. Obviously that's a key cog. Ethan Hampton, as you mentioned, transferring out. But there's some guys who are coming in on the defensive side. They've got 13 or 14 defensive transfers, I think, coming in. Like, this is going to be a transfer heavy defense. But guys who have all done things from various levels, a couple D2 guys, a couple FCS guys. I really like this defense if they can gel. We've seen Northern Illinois kind of go through the spectrum under Thomas Hammock. We've seen them go 0 for 6 in the 2020 season. Then we've seen them turn around and go 9-4 and win the MAC championship. So that there's kind of a full spectrum of what we can kind of expect here. I think that their defense is going to be kind of their key kind of talking point this year. But I think that it's going to come down to a guy like Deshaun Dixon to kind of lead this defense. I fully expect that he's going to get an unbelievable amount of playing time. But I also really think that it's going to be questions are going to be about depth and what you do on offense if somebody goes down again, because I feel like they're really thin on the offensive side.
Sure.
Defense, they're going to be fine. Offense is going to be where you struggle. But if Josh Holtz can get going like he did in the bowl game, watch out for Northern Illinois. And they have the massive target on their back leaving the Mid-American Conference. They're trying to leave the conference with the trophy. Sure. The MAC's trying to say, not doing that. So I'm really excited to watch Northern Illinois this year.
They are kind of the bad boys, I guess, of the MAC. Yeah, they're going to be almost when Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12, right? They said they got everybody's best shot on their way out. It's going to be very similar in the MAC. Now, Toledo beat Mississippi State last year. Northern Illinois gets their crack at the Bulldogs this year. You know, Mississippi State's down right now. There's just no doubt about it. A lot of pieces in, pieces out. Not a lot of continuity for Mississippi State. Could Northern Illinois, on the right day, beat Mississippi State?
Yes. I mean, I just a one word. Yes. I think that it's going to come down to Mississippi State's going to be a little bit more on guard this year. I don't think that they realize. Like, I think. One, you go through the coaching change, you go through all that stuff in Mississippi. So they're going to be better this year. They're not going to be SEC champs this year, but they are going to be better. So I think that they're going to be a little bit more on edge. We're not trying to lose to a group of 5 in back-to-back years, right? We're not trying to lose to a MAC program in back-to-back years. Especially after watching what Toledo did, going 4-4 in conference plays, losing to Akron at the end of they're not trying to repeat those results. So I think that they're going to be better prepared for this game than they were for Toledo, but never say never. Northern Illinois goes down and they play some good football in the non-con. We saw them beat Notre Dame. We saw them beat Georgia Tech a couple years ago. Like, they can do it and they can hang with the big boys for a while. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, a boneyard victory, as Northern Illinois likes to call them, and they come home with another one, and Stark Vegas is 0-2 against the MAC in the last 2 years.
I hate playing MAC teams on the schedule as an SEC fan, SEC grad. The first game of my tenure at Texas A&M, we played Ball State. Ball State was not very good that year, and so we felt genuinely comfortable about that. But last year, we play Bowling Green, and Scott Loeffler's bunch nearly walks out of College Station with a win. So no matter how good or how poor your program is at these power conference levels, there is certainly something about playing a MAC school and just not ever really feeling comfortable until that final whistle has sounded. So yeah, Mississippi State, absolutely an upset to watch if Northern Illinois gets their paws on them. Those are the contenders. Let's go to the dark horses, teams that basically you feel like could get hot, could absolutely ruin somebody's day, and wouldn't necessarily surprise you to end up in Detroit. Give me kind of a storyline or two that you're watching for these teams, and we'll start in Kalamazoo with Western Michigan. When I wrote their preview, the offense last year was certainly fun at times, but Hayden Wolf is gone, right? Across their roster, it feels like a total line change. There are just so many pieces that are brand new, new faces certainly to the starting lineup. They're going to have to find a new quarterback. So when it comes to Western Michigan, what kind of fuels your optimism in the Broncos this year in Lance Taylor's group?
2 words: Jalen Buckley.
Sure.
That's I think they will go as far as he can carry them. Now they've got other great options. They've got so many pieces that I think they can do a lot of good things with. But Jalen Buckley, I think, could win MAC Player of the Year. I think he's that talented of a running back. And I've been high on him since he got to Western Michigan. Now, it didn't come as much to fruition as I was kind of hoping last year. But I think Jalen Buckley is the key cog. So I think the storyline is, how far can Jalen Buckley carry you?
Yeah.
And I know that's so unfair to put on a single player, but he's proven he has high level ability as a running back. Give him a little bit of space. If you can give him an offensive line, he finds a hole, he's gone. Off to the races, galloping into the end zone. And I really think Western Michigan will rely on Jalen Buckley. I also think Western Michigan, an opportunity to have a great defense this year. There's plenty of great offensive pieces coming in. There's going to be great offensive lineman Raheem Anderson coming in, Hunter Whitenack coming in. But on the defensive side, Kershaw Fisher, Sifa Sapia from Ferris State. We got Jordan Thomas coming in from Eastern Kentucky. And then you've got Christian Leary, who we can't not talk about,
Right.
the Alabama and Georgia Tech transfer. I think those are going to be all key pieces to this team. And I'm really excited for what Western Michigan has. But it's going to come down to how good does Jalen Buckley play this year.
I think that's a good storyline to watch. They've got Cole Cabana that comes in from Michigan as well. Will kind of help spell Buckley right. Buckley had a great year last year, over 700 yards rushing. Can he take that next step? I'm glad you mentioned Christian Leary because transferred from Alabama, didn't work out there. Georgia Tech didn't really work out there, and transferred actually before the season was over. Like figured out, hey, I'm going to Kalamazoo even before the 2024 season wrapped up. So with him, Talik Williams coming in from Georgia State, what do you kind of expect from this wide receiver core with Western Michigan? It feels like a lot of question marks, but also maybe a potentially really high ceiling.
Well, I've always been a fan of grandma's patchwork quilts. And that's what this feels like. And I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of you bring in pieces that complement the style you want to run. And I feel like all these guys have the ability to be complementary in Coach Taylor's, program. And so I fully expect that that's what we're going to see. A little bit of patchwork here to start the season. But by the time the season's over, I think we're going to see a lot of gelling and working together and a really good program kind of hopefully take that next step.
Well, we go from Western Michigan to Eastern Michigan, and Chris Creighton in his 12th season. They've got new turf. They've got Max Crosby, who's investing in the NIL. It feels like Eastern Michigan is trying to adapt as much as they can to the modern era of college football. They just missed a bowl game last year, but here they are in your dark horse contender. Talk to me about the Eagles.
Man, I always want to have them as my kind of my dark horse. I feel like there's something about Eastern Michigan under Chris Creighton where they deserve to be brought up. I really think that there's something about what he brings to the table as a coach. He's done a phenomenal job of inspiring a program that was frankly dead to rights in the conference. We talk about where Kent State's at now. That was Eastern Michigan prior to Coach Creighton being there. And so I think once he finally got his guys, his athletes, whatever, into this program, this is something that you can get really, really, really excited about. You've got a couple graduate students that you're going to have to rely on. You're going to be looking at a Terry Lockett. You're going to be looking at Ziel Griffith, Joshua Scott. These are just the super seniors, if you will. But there are a lot of guys. Noah Kim, I think, is the one that should be kind of highlighted on everybody's kind of radar this year. Right. Isaac Smith, another wide receiver, coming in. He comes in from Wisconsin. I think that this is going to be a really fun offense to kind of watch because it's going to be a completely different offense. This is, you got Tavier Dunlap, JT Bronaugh. This team has a lot of potential. And they've got a lot of young guys too. I think that's the thing that I really like about this program. A lot of young guys. If they can get things going early, this is a team to watch out for. I like that they've got Texas State to kind of kick off the slate. Then they've got a game at Kentucky. That to me is exciting. You got the win. I shouldn't say the game against Long Island. But I feel like we can almost chalk that up as a win unless you're Kent State. And I feel like I really like this schedule. They did a nice job kind of creating a good non-conference schedule. Couple quality group of 5, Louisiana, Texas State, Long Island out of New York, and then of course Kentucky, your SEC program. This is a good test before you get into conference play. You kick off conference play with Central Michigan. This is a really good test for Eastern Michigan to kind of take that next step. And I think the other thing that benefits them, you get Max Crosby as your GM.
Yeah.
That's a name that everybody in the NFL knows. The highest paid defensive player in the NFL right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to see his name plastered on the sidelines. You get to see that brought up over and over and over. This is going to be a huge recruiting selling point for Eastern Michigan moving forward.
I love it. I think there is some momentum up there for sure for the Eagles. I wrote that if the passing attack could climb into the top 50, I would really be bullish on them. And then, with the transfers that they brought in and the seniors and the veterans that they've got on that defense, if you can get the defense inside the top 75, right? Just be an average defense. I like the runway for the Eagles to be dangerous and be a contender late in the season. Final dark horse for you is the Buffalo Bulls. And This is a team that the first MAC, we have to do them in 2 parts because Substack only allows the articles to be so long. So in MAC preview part 1, my title was, could Buffalo make the college football playoff? And Buffalo is probably my darling to win the MAC this year.
Wow.
I love what they have on the ground attack. I love that running back stable. When you think of Buffalo football, when I think of watching MAC in the 2010s, and obviously ever since then, it's run the football. It's the running backs that they've had in that program. It's some tenacity on defense. Obviously, everyone knows Khalil Mack, but last year under Pete Limbo, they took this massive step forward, and it felt like, okay, now we can reach a new ceiling, have new potential. The schedule isn't that bad. The big hang up for me, who's going to play quarterback?
Well, that's the $1 million question, right? They've got options. I'm not going to pretend like they don't have options, but I think when you kind of look at what they have, it's going to come down to who wins in camp. We saw a few glimpses of brilliance here in the preseason, but you've got Gunnar Ray, Jack Shields, Taquan Robinson, Jason Wright, not to leave out Mason Crummy, or Cumby or Anthony Policare. I think, if I'm being honest, the guy I think who could really win this job is probably going to be Gunnar Gray.
That's who I, in my limited tape that I've watched, that's who I'd pick as well.
And of course, knowing Pete Lembeau and the kind of coach he is, he's going to completely throw all of this off, and he's going to pick, he's going to call me up to come play quarterback.
Yeah, it's going to be a walk-on, right? A 7th guy.
but I don't want to say to discredit Taquan Robertson either. He was most recently at Kansas State, and I think that's an exciting transfer. And I think that's anytime you get a guy from a power program, doesn't matter the conference. Anytime you get a guy from a power program, there's a lot of value in that. There's a lot of, okay, we can really utilize their experience, even if they didn't play much. They practice with Power 4 guys. They got prep from Power 4 coaches. Guys who just have access to a little bit better, just because of pure financial resources. You bring a guy like that in, that is veteran leadership from a bigger program. And I think that right there adds a lot of value. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Taquan Robertson be contending with Gunnar Gray.
Tell you what, if they can figure out a quarterback, team early on, week 1, right? They opened their schedule against Minnesota. Minnesota has a habit of, and Minnesota's a team that I'm very high on in the Big Ten schedule. I think they're going to be a very good team. So no shade to Gopher fans, who we seem to be very quite popular with over on Twitter. But Minnesota has a scary habit of playing very close games at home to open the season, and so suddenly, as both sides are feeling each other out and they're trying to understand what their team is going to look like, if this becomes a 3 yards in a cloud of dust style of ball game on both sides, with Minnesota's running game and Buffalo's running game, suddenly it might be first team to 14 to 17 points could win this. And that seems to be the style of game that Buffalo would want to play to pull off a big upset, especially early on in the season.
Well, I 100% agree with you. I think it's going to come down to how good is this defense.
Yes.
The offense is going to need time to gel. But you're going to rely on guys like Red Murdoch. You're going to rely on Keontae Bradley coming in from Arizona State. Like, you've got good pieces on the defensive side. Rely on them to give your offense a shot. Because the offense is, because of the quarterback, such a wild card. You got to give the offense some time to kind of, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
So the defense is going to be the one that you rely on early on. So I like the defense this year for Buffalo.
Mac fans may think I'm crazy. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they're jumping on board with me and getting Buffalo all the way to Detroit. But I think it's the storyline that I'm most looking forward to rooting for in the conference this year. And so I've just decided to go all in there. So,
right.
We'll see what Buffalo does.
I don't blame you.
That's what makes this fun, right?
I've got them as a dark horse for a reason, because I think people are sleeping on them. But I do think that they really have a good shot at getting to Detroit.
Sure. Bowl hopefuls, you've got 2 teams in this tier, and then we'll talk about 3 teams that, listen, postseason probably not in their future this year. But let's start with Ball State. And it's a brand new era. The Mike New era disappointingly came to a conclusion, maybe mercifully came to a conclusion. I know there'd been a lot of frustration with Cardinals fans, feeling like the program could be achieving so much more, and they were just kind of mired in mediocrity. So, bowl hopeful, what's the path to 6 wins for the Cardinals this season?
Scoring more than the other team.
Simple as that.
Right. Yeah, there it is. I should be a college football coach. I have the answer. Just score more than everybody else. I think you win the games that you need to win. I think that's first and foremost. I was looking at Ball State's schedule earlier because we'll be doing our preview of Ball State tonight.
Nice.
And you could probably write off Purdue, Auburn, and Connecticut. So honestly, just and the Mike Arimovich, kind of his first year, you write off those wins or write off those games. New Hampshire, you have to beat New Hampshire. Ohio, I don't know that you beat Ohio, but depending on what Western Michigan's doing, you get a win against Western Michigan. You have to beat Akron. You have to beat Kent State. And then you've got 3 in a row over Northern Illinois. How sweet would it be to keep the bronze stock as they're leaving the conference?
Absolutely.
And then you've got a game. Then you've got a tough end of conference slate. You've got Toledo and Miami on the road. But I think the one you got to circle right there in Muncie, Eastern Michigan, midweek action in November.
Yeah.
You find wins in those games. That's 6 wins. Ball State finds themselves in a bowl game. Now, I don't think it's that likely. I do think that they're probably at best 3 to 5 wins. And that's okay. A lot of turnover. This is a program that lost a lot. Tanner Koziel to Wisconsin. Christian Abney transferred out. Like, this offense is depleted.
Yeah.
But there's some good stuff here. And I really think that Ball State, they have some stuff to work with. Elijah Durham, freshman, opportunity for him to I think he was a redshirt freshman officially, an opportunity for him to really step up, be a big time playmaker. Eric Weatherby, the transfer from Bucknell, again, Tanner Koziel, he transferred out. But I don't think that this is a program that is depleted. They've got guys from Butler coming in with Coach Mike, so they already know his system.
Right.
This is a really, really interesting one. Kyle Kelly, probably going to be the starter. We'll see. Who knows? But we'll see. I mean, he's played all over the field. And I think that brings a lot of value, but that shows a little bit, with all due respect to Mike New, who I love and adore. That shows that there wasn't a real plan on how to use him the right way.
Right.
And that was a problem.
I would love to see the defense take a step forward. You mentioned the players coming over from Butler, right? Yurmich comes over from Butler. His former DC at Butler was Jeff Knowles. And so even though in year one, it didn't look great, they gave up over 40 points a game. If they can see those incremental improvements and get the familiarity and the continuity within the program, that I think starts to be the hope for Ball State.
Yes.
I'm excited that maybe a larger swath of college football fans are going to get to see Tanner Koziel now at Houston after I was surprised he left Wisconsin.
That's right. Yeah, he did go to Houston now, didn't he?
Yeah, no, well, did it in the spring portal, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And joins a Houston program that I'm very bullish on. So I love them adding a weapon like him, but at the same time, I hate it for Ball State because, gosh, he was just so fantastic for the Cardinals. So interesting to see what we get in Muncie. The other team that you have in this category is the Chips of Central Michigan. Matt Drinkall coming over from Army. Feels like it's going to be kind of a new era, a new identity, hopefully, for the Chips after Jim McElwain retires. Drinkall, formerly the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach in kind of different capacities at Army. One thing that we know for sure, he's going to bring physicality and he's going to bring a toughness, I think, to this Central Michigan offense. Matt Sprouse of the group of five guys is very high on what he can build up there for the Chips. So it seems like perhaps you share a lot of those same sentiments.
I do. I've been very fortunate to have a chance to kind of interact with him on Twitter, and I can't help but get excited. Coach and I have exchanged a few DMs just on different things, and there's a lot of reason to get excited about Central Michigan. Trey Cornish coming in, the running back, I think is going to be a massive cog. John Iannuski, Iannuzzi, not Iannuski, coming in. That's going to be a massive bolster to the line. I think that this is exactly what Central Michigan needed. Jim McElwain did a great job. Got them that Sun Bowl win over Washington State. This program is hurting for a MAC championship. They have not really. I mean, they were in the championship in 2019, haven't been contenders since the Dan Lefevre era of college football. They, obviously not him,
Throwback.
but yeah, this is 15, 13, 14 years in the making of them being, part of this college football contender for the American Conference. And I think Drinkall is the one to do it. He brings a lot of discipline, and I think that's going to be the big one, is the discipline that he brings from the Service Academy. So I think for me, that's what you got to get really excited about, is that you're going to see a very disciplined Central Michigan team.
I would love to see Central Michigan get back to those Lefevre era days of being competitive. That is, for me, one of the earliest memories that I have of really paying attention to MAC football. And Central Michigan was a team that I instantly fell in love with, whether it was just kind of their attitude, the way that they played. Love the school colors as well. It feels like a program that could and should be competing for more MAC championships than what they have, certainly,
Right.
like you mentioned, the last decade and a half. So excited to see what Coach Drinkall can do up there. we move to the final tier here. And listen, for one reason or another, these three teams are not expected to make the postseason, right? It's not even really realistic to say, hey, a bowl game is on the horizon. But
Yeah.
there are things that we love about each of these programs. And so we've got a new head coach up in Amherst. Let's start with the Minutemen, new conference member. And UMass is going to be an interesting case study because in the FBS they've never had any sort of success, and yet it almost feels like maybe moving back to the MAC and coming up with an identity, a defensive identity specifically, is something that they could sell to recruits. I wrote in my preview for UMass that the havoc defense that they play, the black hole defense, right? That Coach Harris Simiak came up with when he was at Maine. It reminds me when I watch it of what Jim Knowles has done and made his reputation at Oklahoma State, and then won a national championship at Ohio State, and now has taken that to Penn State. You never know where those blitzes are coming from. You never know where the pressure, what the looks actually mean. Similar to a program like Rice and Scott Abel coming in from Davidson and not having scholarships to work with and all of these academic restrictions, the deck is stacked against you, right? For UMass, finding an identity that they can sell, that they can brand their program with, that feels like the best possible path to winning and sustaining any sort of success in today's college football.
No, I think, man, it's tough, right? You know, I think what UMass has done well. Last year they sent Jacoby Keeney James to the NFL, and I think having guys that are in the league, that contributes just as much. Like, because then it's so easy to sell recruits. Hey, come here, play football, whatever. But when you can say, hey, come here, you have a shot at going to the league, and then you can back that up, I think that's a contributing factor. I think people, want to look at college football as how successful were you? Did you win the national championship? Did you not?
Right.
And,
Very
and
black
I
and
think,
white.
and I think there's so many other elements to that, that people don't look at. And obviously at the end of the day, nobody remembers second place, right? Nobody remembers third place. But those players remember second place, third place. They remember being in those moments, having those opportunities. And I think that's what I'm really excited about for UMass. The first time they're in the MAC, not great.
Not great.
This time, they've got a lot of support behind them. They've got a lot of NIL money kind of coming in. And I really think that there is an opportunity for them to maybe not have a special first season, but wouldn't be surprised if they played a couple games a little bit closer than they should.
I think that's such a good point that you make about, college football is not, college sports in general is not black and white. Did you win the national championship? Did you not? I think, get conditioned to believe that because the big national outlets and all of Twitter will tell you it's national championship or bust. But 99% of us, our favorite thing is not, did our program win the last national championship? It's the memories made going to tailgate. It's a special fall Saturday, with your family or with friends. And similarly, I think players have a lot of different ties to the sport and to a program rather than just, well, there's one team now out of 136 that wins the national championship. If we're weighing it against that, every other program equally, then nobody's going to be happy, right? And why the heck are we doing this in the first place? So I think that's a great point that you make. I had a discussion about a Big Ten program over on Twitter that fans were asking, why is this program so criminally underrated every year? And I said the exact same thing. Well, Twitter will ask, did they win the national championship? No. Okay, then we don't care about them. But that's not actually reality. So it sounds like we're finding, similar optimism certainly up in Amherst. Let's talk Akron, and the Joe Moorhead era has been interesting because offensively, I think you've seen some development, and you've certainly seen some players on both sides of the ball get poached by other successful programs. And so on one hand, there are some really nice things that are happening for the Zips, but the record has not helped. Moorhead has made incremental improvements, but we have not gotten Akron to a bowl game, right? We have not gotten them into MAC contention. And this year will be the same, regardless of what their record is, because now, due to academic violations, they're ineligible for the postseason. So, sell me, the Zip fan, on what I should be excited about for this year.
That they're going to go 12-0 and you can claim a regular season championship. No, I think, for all the stuff that Akron has kind of going against it, if you're a fan, you can play spoiler. Akron can still play spoiler to anybody. It's not like these wins will be vacated, right? This isn't the 2015 season where they had their bowl game vacated and a couple other games. No, all of these wins will count.
Yeah.
They will go in the record books. You will be a record, whatever. You can play spoiler to MAC teams. That, and I think if you're a fan, you get excited about that. You get excited about the idea that, hey, we may not go to a postseason. Honestly, Kent State might not either, but guess what? We can still win the wagon wheel.
Yeah.
I think you got to get excited about other things. Because Akron hasn't been to a bowl game since pre-2020.
Right.
But you're like you mentioned, marginal improvement. The end of the Terry Bowden era, he left the cupboard unbelievably bare.
Yeah.
Then Tom Arth comes in, and I love Tom Arth, the former John Carroll quarterback, record-holding quarterback, played behind Peyton Manning in the NFL and at Indy. Fun fact, if you didn't know that. He comes in and he does the best he can. Akron is an incredibly difficult place to be successful. And I don't know what it is. If I've tried to figure it out. I don't know what it is. Akron is a very tough place to be successful. But I think if you're an Akron fan this year, you get excited about the idea that, hey, we have a program that we can really try to watch develop. This is a free development year for a bunch of the younger guys. Those losses, those wins don't count towards bowl games, but the losses don't count against bowl games.
It's kind of like the SAT,
so you can play
right?
a little bit. You can play a little bit almost fast and loose this year.
Yeah.
There's not as much pressure because you go 12-0. Guess what? You can only go 12-0. You go 0-12. Well, guess what? That you're missing a bowl game because of that. Like, either way, I think that this is a fast and loose year for the Akron Zips.
It's a good point. It almost takes the pressure off and allows them to truly, I think it allows maybe the coaching staff to get everything out of this year in a sandbox, essentially.
Yeah.
And try things. And you're right. Figure out what the future is for Akron, and hopefully, listen, they get those grades up and they're eligible for the postseason next year. And that's the target that we've got for 2026. Bring us home with the Golden Flashes. And to be honest, I don't know where to start with Kent State. So I'll just turn it over to you. Like, what do you think about this Kent State program? A program that we've seen do some really fun things and has turned out some really fun talent over the years. And then they go 0-12 last year.
Kent State's tough. I'm trying to think how I want to say this in the most diplomatic way I can.
Sure.
But I'm just going to say it. Kent State, the expectations aren't any lower. You have an opportunity to go out here and you win 2 wins. You've doubled your win total from last year.
Yeah.
You've doubled your win total from 2 years ago.
From the 2
You've
years,
added 2 wins to last year's record. I think Mark Carney has an incredible opportunity in front of him because he's been named the long-term interim coach. He has not been officially named the head coach. You get these guys to rally around you. You pick up 4 wins. I feel like that's reasonable. You're getting the job.
Yeah.
Especially if one of those wins is against Akron. You're getting the job. You're getting the wagon wheel. I think anything above that is well exceeds expectations. I think really you have to hope for 2 wins this year if you're Akron. One of them is probably UMass. Um, one of them is probably your FCS game.
Hmm.
If you win the Akron game, that's 3 wins. You're partying in downtown Kent until the bars close at 11 o'clock.
Sure.
So I think, and all jokes aside, I love Kent State. I've got great memories being at Kent State. Dick Stadium is awesome. I've been very blessed to get to see behind the scenes of their facilities. Kent State is a great place. And I will always say that. But I think that right now, again, similar to Akron, Mark Carney, you can play a little bit fast and loose this year.
Yeah.
You already don't have the head coaching gig locked up. The worst you can do is they say, "Hey, thanks for coaching this season. Good luck."
Right. They can't take it away from him. He doesn't have it.
Right. Exactly. So, thanks for filling in. We're going to go do our national search. But if you find some success, it's, hey, thanks for filling in. Also, here's a contract.
Right.
I think you play fast and loose again. And that's why this Akron Kent State game for me is going to be very exciting, because it's very much fast and loose for both of these programs this year. Very much, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
What do people say? F it, we ball.
Yes.
I feel like that's what this is for Akron and Kent State this year.
I think that's a great way to summarize it. And you know what? I mean, Kent State has some interesting pieces on offense. The defense, let's try not to give up 45 points a game. Let's keep opponents under 260 yards rushing against us. But Jordan Newman comes over to be in the backfield. CJ Montez, who we've heard that name before.
Love him.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a fun piece at quarterback. He certainly was for Florida A&M. So, yeah. Anyway, it does feel like a choose your own adventure novel for Akron and for Kent State. A lot of similarities between those two programs that I'm sure as Akron fans would not want to hear, and Kent State fans, maybe that's a little bit optimistic for them. But yeah, I think make the absolute most out of this year if you're Kent State, and just have pieces on the spreadsheet on your presentation to the administration of why you should hire me.
Yeah.
Have some progress points, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have some nice pieces there in the data. Well, Alex, this has been tremendous. We spent far longer than I assumed we would on this. I appreciate you diving into the weeds of MAC football with me. Let the folks know where they can find you guys over on the podcast side.
Yeah, first off, again, thank you for having me on. It's always, I always get excited when I get to talk with you guys, and to talk the MAC preview. You guys bring you bring a lot of stuff to the table. You're incredibly knowledgeable, and it makes it fun. Makes those conversations. This didn't feel like it was an hour plus. It felt like it was 20 minutes. So I really appreciate the knowledge and the work that you guys put into really building up your brand and your knowledge base. So thank you for having me on. But for anybody interested and you want to know more about the MAC and hear my ramblings on why I think the MAC is better than everybody else, I'm happy to direct you to the MAC Sports Connection podcast. You can find that anywhere podcasts are available: Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music. You can also download it on the Varsity Network or the Varsity app by Lairfield. You can save the podcast there. You can also find a bunch of other cool podcasts and all the live sporting events for your favorite colleges, which is pretty cool as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then any of our socials, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, at the MSC Podcast, YouTube, the MSC Podcast, and then Facebook for anybody over 50 is at the Mac Sports Connection podcast. So feel free to check me out wherever. My co-host Graham and I are breaking down each team, doing a preview for every single program in the MAC, and looking forward to kicking this season off, man. It should be a good time.
Oh gosh, I know we're in that home stretch. We're almost to media days and talking season, and then it will just be put the pads on, hit somebody in a different colored jersey.
Yes,
we're almost there, and I'm excited for it. Appreciate you coming on, dropping MAC knowledge on us. We will absolutely be listening to the MAC previews that you guys roll out and retweeting those as we see them on our channels as well. If you're finding us for the first time through Alex, through the MAC Sports Connection podcast, welcome. We'd love to have you be a part of the Jimmies and the Joes as well. You can win a free copy of College Football 26 if you head on over to our social channels at 3Tech Pod There's a survey that you have to fill out. We would appreciate your support there, and would love to give you away a free copy of the game and some home field merch as well. But for Alex, I'm Mitch. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, so long, everyone.